This is why you should never rush to conclusions. Once there was a young couple getting married. At their wedding reception, their friends decided to play a game of hide and seek with the bride and the groom. It was decided that the groom would try to find his bride, and the bride would find somewhere to hide. But hours passed and the groom had searched everywhere in the venue and couldn't find where she was hiding. He assumed that she must be having second thoughts about getting married. He got mad and stormed off. Weeks went by and he accepted that she must have gone on with her life and didn't want to contact him anymore, so he did the same. A few years later, though, the cleaning lady found something horrifying. She went into the attic of the building where the reception had taken place years ago. There, she found an old trunk. She opened it and found the rotting body of the missing bride. Her face was still frozen in a scream, and inside the trunk were huge scratch marks from when she tried to get out.
Story time about how I got caught skipping school almost every day of my senior year. So our school had just started this new thing where you fill out all your contact information online. And my dad was like, okay, yeah, just fill yours out. And it pretty much was who can pick you up, who can make early dismissals for you, who they can call if you're in trouble. Well, I decided to be a sneaky little bastard and put my boyfriend in for every single one of those contacts. I would start school around 7:30 a.m. and I would go to the nurse's office at like 9 a.m. and she would call and my boyfriend would act like my dad and be like, okay, yeah, just let her drive home. Well, my guidance counselor noticed after about 3 months of me never being at school. So she called the number hoping to speak to my dad, but instead she got my boyfriend. And he just thought it was a random person, so he didn't act like my dad because neither of us knew. Like for part 2.
Here's something fun. When you're in a long-term relationship, you'll often find yourself doing this thing with your partner where you'll say, when we have kids, I hope they have this trait of yours. And today my husband was like, I hope our kids will be as resilient and determined as you. When I was 11 years old, I got in a fight with my mum when she was picking me up from school, and I was being so rude that she wanted to teach me a lesson and scare me a little bit. So she said, you can find your own way home. Left me outside of my classroom, got in her car and drove off. Now, realistically, she was just doing the block and was going to come back and pick me up, hoping that I would be apologetic. But I wasn't. I was very stubborn and was like, I can find my own way home. And I decided to run home. I, in fact, sprinted from the school grounds and ran into a close family friend who offered to give me a lift, which I accepted, and I got home by my own means. Now, my mum did do the block and not only came back to me not being where she left me, but to one of my friends saying, yeah, I saw her get in the car with some weird guy. Imagining my mum's soul leaving her body that day is enough for me to not ever want kids, let alone kids like me.
I faked my death? Story time. Growing up, my older brother would never listen to our mom. Like, whatever she said, he would do the complete opposite. One day my mom had got us these basketballs and she told us to not play with them in the house. But of course, my brother did not listen. So my mom leaves us alone for like 2 seconds and my brother starts throwing his basketball around. And I'm looking at him like, what are you doing? And he's like, mind your business, little boy. And I was like, Mom told us not to play with those in the house. And I guess I was being annoying because he threw his basketball at my head. And it hits me and I fall over, and in my head I'm like, I could do one of two things. I could tell my mom and get him in trouble, or I could fake my death. So I pretended that I was dead. And I was sitting on the floor like, and I sat there for a long time and I really tried hard not to breathe or move. So he runs over to me and he's trying to see if I'm okay, and he notices that I'm not moving. And he really thought that I had died. So he starts to cry and freak out. And then it makes me laugh. And then he beat me up. And then I started crying. I may have gotten a child in trouble today. Story time. So today I went to the store to buy some things because I needed some things. So I went to the store, gathered all my items, and then I got in line. And I ended up being behind a mom and her son. And her son had to be like 6 or 7 years old. So the boy and his mom get up to the register, and you know how they have candy next to the register for you to buy? The little boy asked his mom if he could have a chocolate, and she was like, no, you don't need any right now. So he gets mad, folds his arm, and then he turns around and he looks at me. And this is where I may have made a mistake. I lean down and I whisper to him and I'm like, just steal the chocolate. Nobody's gonna notice. Now, of course I was joking, but he actually took the chocolate and put it in his pocket. And I thought he was gonna get away with it too, but he did not. While I was at the register buying my stuff, they start walking out the door and a security guard came from the back and stopped them. And security was like, what do you got in your pocket, little buddy? You plan on buying that? And then the little boy's mom starts yelling at him and she's like, what do you have in your pockets? I didn't teach you to steal. You were not raised like that. And I ain't say nothing. I bought my stuff and walked right past him. We put our teacher in the hospital. story time. My 6th grade class was so freaking bad, you guys. I mean, I wasn't, but the rest of the kids were horrible. Our classroom was located on the 2nd floor, so sometimes kids would throw things out the window and try to hit the kids on the ground. And normally it would just be things like pencils or crumbled up pieces of paper, nothing that could really hurt anybody, right? But one day while we were taking a test, my teacher had realized she forgot something in her car, so she left us in the classroom by ourselves. And some kids in my class thought it would be perfect to use this opportunity to cheat. So there was one kid in my class, and we're gonna name him Chris, but he decided to be a lookout, so he stood near the window to keep an eye out for the teacher. Well, when he saw her coming, the rest of the kids weren't done cheating yet, so they told him to cause a distraction. So he runs over to his desk, grabs the biggest textbook he can find, and throws it out the window at the teacher. The book hits her in the face, and it busted her bottom lip open. It was so bad that the school had to send her to the hospital.
If anyone's wanting to know how to get revenge on someone who spread rumors about you, listen to this story and it may come in handy. So I had a friend that we can call Miranda who was obsessed with me. I was genuinely friends with her, but she would never give me a break. I could not get a breather from her at any point in time. Everywhere I went, she went. And this girl would actually get so upset with me anytime I would go over to another friend's house. I knew she was really insecure and just trying to get attention, so I tried to be patient with her. However, one day I just could not take it anymore. I got into a massive fight with her over how overprotective she is. I literally said, "You are a stage 5 clinger." And in response, this girl ended up joining my basketball and softball team, which I've been on for forever. She told her mom that I was bullying her, which was a complete lie, but then her mom went to the coaches. She got me kicked off the team and then continued to spread rumors about me. I ended up losing my best friends and even my boyfriend over the rumors that she spread about me. So that's when I decided to get revenge. So I decided that I was going to send her over an apology gift with makeup in it, which was a mix of drugstore items and poison ivy.
I got fired for burning a customer. Story time. So I used to work at this Italian restaurant as a waiter, and it was really nice because all the people were really nice except for the boss's mother. She would unfortunately come into the restaurant and eat there every now and again, and I was always the one taking care of her. So she comes in and she sits down in my section. So I walk over to her and I'm like, "Hi ma'am, what can I start you with?" So she looks at me and she's like, "Can I have a second? I just sat down." So I'm like, "Okay," and I start to walk away. And then she's like, "Okay boy, I know what I want, come back to the table." So I turn back around and I'm like, "It's Ty, my name is Ty." And she's like, "Whatever boy, just get me a water and a chicken soup and make sure it's extra hot." So I walk away, I'm irritated, and I put her order in. And I make sure to tell the guy to make it extra hot. So when her soup is done, I bring it over to the table, but before I can put it down, she reaches up and snatches the bowl out of my hand and the hot soup spills all over her. She starts screaming. The boss comes running out of the back to see what's going on. She tells him I dumped the soup on her on purpose. Then he fires me.
Have you let anyone borrow your phone before? One woman let her son borrow her phone, but she could have never expected the terrifying things she saw after she got her phone back. So this woman got her new phone and she put it on the kitchen counter and went to watch some TV. That's when her son came in and asked if he could borrow the phone to play with it. The woman didn't think much of it at first, so she agreed, but she could have never known that this would lead to a terrifying discovery. When it was nighttime, she got ready to tuck her son into bed, so she went upstairs to his room, but he wasn't there. Then she ran over to her room and saw him sleeping on her bed with the new phone in his hand. She felt relieved, so she took her phone back and started looking through it. At first, nothing was out of the ordinary. She saw her background had changed, but it wasn't until she saw the photos that she found the horrifying surprise.
I'm gonna tell you guys why I don't keep food in my room anymore. At least why I don't keep this particular food in my room anymore. So when I was a kid, my dad used to leave the country a lot. Every time he would come back, he'd always bring us some sort of goodie. It'd always be like bracelets, t-shirts, and candy. One time after a trip to, I think it was Dominican Republic, brought us back a bunch of lollipops. These are not normal lollipops like you're thinking in your head. These are these giant brown flat lollipops. Now, instead of eating them, me and my sister decided it would be best to hoard them. Yes, that's right, keep them in our room for as long as possible. For what purpose? I don't know. I think it was probably like, no, we can't eat them now. If something happens and we need them. Bruh. It's not every day that we got candy, apparently. So we kept them in our room. We kind of put them on display, up against the wall, right in between both of our beds, in this very room. This time I was about 6? My sister's about a year and a half older than me, so she was like 7, I guess. Now, these lollipops were given to both of us. They were displayed equally distanced between both of our beds, because they belonged to us both. I'm not really sure how this happened. But one night, me and my sister went to bed, but then my sister started tossing and turning. Calls out for my mom. My mom comes and she's like, "What's wrong?" Oh my God, I'm ready.
My mom spanked my bully? Story time. When I was in 3rd grade, I used to hate going to the bus stop because there was a boy there who would bully me. And it got so bad that some days I would go home crying. I felt like I couldn't do anything because he was much older than I was. So of course I told my mom, and she called the school and they did nothing about it. So then my mom somehow found out who his parents were and she went to go talk to them. And all they said about it was, boys will be boys, there's really nothing we can do about it. And then that's when my mom was like, if y'all don't handle it, I will. So the next morning she told me to go to the bus stop, and if my bully bothered me, to come back home and tell her. So I went to the bus stop, and of course he bothered me. So I went back home, told my mom, and she immediately grabbed her belt and dragged me back to the bus stop. She walked up to that boy and was like, are you bothering my son? And the boy was like, yes I am. What are you gonna do about it, grandma? My mom grabbed that boy by his shirt, turned him around, and started spanking him with her belt. And it was so loud. Literally got his cheeks clapped. My brother tried to flush me down the toilet. Story time. A lot of you guys already know this, but I have an older brother, and when we were younger, he was really mean to me. Not mean, but like evil, okay? So when I was a baby, I required a lot of attention, which is normal, you know, babies require a lot of attention, but my brother did not like that at all. He was used to having all the attention, but then I came around and took it from him. So he decided that he was gonna get rid of me. So one day when my mom was giving me a bath, he had asked if he could help her. And she said yes, but I secretly think she was in on his plan. Because while they were bathing me, someone knocked on the door, so my mom left me and him in the bathroom alone to go answer the door. So I guess my brother was like, now's my chance to get rid of this little turd. So he takes me out of the bathtub. I can't talk or anything yet, so I don't know what's going on. Puts me headfirst in the toilet and starts to flush. And obviously I wasn't going down, so he took the plunger and he started to plunge me down the toilet. But before he could get me all the way down, my mom walked in and saved my life. Like, I could have drowned. My mom beat up the neighbor. Story time. So I used to have this neighbor, and we're gonna call her Miss Jackson. Now Miss Jackson was super annoying, and she always found something to complain about. So my mom already didn't like her to begin with. So one day me and my friends were playing soccer outside in my front yard, and we were having a lot of fun until one of us kicked the ball into Miss Jackson's yard. Now normally when something like this happened, Miss Jackson would come outside, she would yell at us, but she would give our ball back. But this time, she comes outside with a pair of scissors, walks up to the soccer ball, and starts stabbing it. And then after she pops it, she throws it back at us and goes inside. Now, I was upset, and I didn't know what to do, so I just went and told my mom. And when I told my mom, she was heated. She goes over to Miss Jackson's house and starts banging on the door. And as soon as she opened the door, my mom grabbed her by the hair and started punching her. And Miss Jackson didn't even fight back. She was just apologizing the entire time.
So last night, I got the shit scared out of me. So last night, I was hanging out with my boyfriend having a good time. And it was around 9 o'clock and he had to drop me off. So on the way back to my house, I got this really bad feeling in my stomach. I just felt really uneasy and I just had like a pit in my stomach. So when we pull up to my house, I asked my boyfriend if he could just sit outside for a minute because I felt a little uneasy. And obviously he said yes. But as I'm walking up to my front door, I hear somebody scream. And I don't mean the type of scream that's like, ah! I mean the type of scream that's like, ah! You know what I'm saying? So I run over to my boyfriend's car and I'm like, did you just hear that? And he's like, nah, I didn't hear shit. So I just tell myself I'm hearing things. Flash forward, it's later in the night around like 1 a.m. and I start having really bad paranoia. So I go out into the kitchen to get me some water when I look into my dad's room and I see glowing eyes staring back at me.
Like right here. So I just ran back to my room and it only gets worse.
For about 10 years, I have been in a group of friends, 6 couples and 3 singles. One of the couples, Jane and John, started trying for a baby about 6 to 7 years ago, and they found out that they most likely would never have a baby. Neither of the rest of us were trying at that time, but they asked that whenever someone got pregnant, we would let them know in private and respect that they might need some space. Until 4 years ago, it was all fine between us all, but Jane still hadn't gotten pregnant and she was struggling a lot, especially with several of our friends having babies, including me and my husband. Jane didn't want to be around us as much and asked that we step down on all contact. All of us with kids, that is. We understood and respected it. But after a while, she started talking bad about us to our friends without kids and posting things on Facebook and Instagram, basically ranting about how awful we all were and that we were having kids to rub it in her face that she couldn't get pregnant. After about a year of this, I blocked her on everything. And I didn't hear from her until a few days ago. She is 7 months pregnant and wants to make up.
I'm pretty sure my teacher ate my classroom pet Story time. So I had this teacher named Mr. B, and he was always talking about the weird foods he liked to eat. For instance, live octopus, 1,000-year-old duck eggs, snails, and frog legs. But the thing is, we had a frog named Mr. Grumpy as a classroom pet. A frog, just like Mr. B said he liked to eat the legs of. But one day when we came back from lunch, Mr. Grumpy was missing. So of course we're all like, where's Mr. Grumpy? What happened to Mr. Grumpy? Mr. B, where's Mr. Grumpy? And Mr. B says, Mr. Grumpy passed away during lunch, and I buried him outside so you guys didn't have to see it. And most of us were mad because we were like, you buried Mr. Grumpy without us? Also, if I was a superhero, what do you guys think my superhero name would be with this look? So we finish out the rest of class, and then we go home, but then we come back the next day. And in the middle of class, my favorite teacher walks in. Shout out to you, Janice. Don't sue me, girl. So she walks in, and she goes up to Mr. B, and she says, how are those frog legs you had yesterday? Were they good? My mom tried to drown this little girl. Story time. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, my family got a pool, so they signed me up for swimming lessons. And I loved everything about the class except for this one girl who we're gonna name Pamela. She was the worst. And every time we had a class, when nobody was looking, she would hold my head underwater for an extremely long time. Now, normally, my dad would take me to my swimming lessons, but this time, my mom ended up taking me. And my mom does not play when it comes to her kids. So during class, Pamela thought nobody was looking, so she started holding me underwater again. However, my mom saw. My mom ends up running over, grabbing me out of the water, and then she grabs Pamela by the head, dunks her under the water, and holds her there for a really long time. Thank God the instructor was there. I may have killed my brother's bird. Story time. When we were younger, our parents would always get us matching animals. Like we had matching fish, matching bunnies, matching lizards, matching hamsters, and also matching birds. We had 2 blue, tiny little parakeets, and they were so cute, but like evil. Now, when we got these birds, my brother was so happy because he loves birds. I don't, but he does. But like I said, they were so mean, and he was the only one who could actually hold them. So one day he walks into my room with the bird on his arm, and he's like, hey, look at me. I can hold my bird, and you can't hold yours. Ha 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 ha. So then I was like, your bird is ugly anyway. I don't care. So then he starts chasing me around my room with his bird on his arm, trying to put it on me. And I never ran so fast in my life because I was not trying to get bit by that thing, okay? And eventually he gets me cornered in my room, and I'm so scared, and he starts putting the bird closer and closer and closer to my face, and I don't want to get bit on the nose. So before the bird touches my face, I smack his hand down. And I may have hit his arm a little bit too hard because when the bird hit the ground, she never got back up.